Hey there YouTube, Doc's Motorcycle Service, rawr, 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 rawr. Welcome back to the garage. Alright, so in this continuing series on the rear end of the bike, in the previous videos you might have seen the fender already up there on the bike, and it wasn't secure, but it was in place. But we had to have it in place because we had wrapped up the last wiring video where we YouTube, we completely rewired this motorcycle. I mean, front to back, and we've done some really cool stuff to it. We wrapped some of the front wires from the headlights and the spotlights in steel braided weave. Yeah, we did that, and I'll put a little link right here to that video. And so we had to put the fender onto the back of the bike to mop up or mock up how much wire we needed. It's really tight up there in that fender. I mean, really tight. Right quick, check out the Facebook page. If you're thinking about rewiring a bike or putting a new, matter of fact, we put a different turn signal mounting bar. We brought it in a little bit. I'll put a link here to that video as well. So while we had it up there, we just had the bolts pushed in on the side, but what we're going to do is we're going to get that tightened down. And if time allows in the video, we're probably going to mock up the swing arm to get it in position and ready to go in. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So we need to go ahead and get this fender tightened up to the fender frame in here with the chrome accent on the outside of it. We need to get the tag bracket put on the back. We need to get these rubber bumpers installed. And these rubber bumpers, all they really do is sit on the inside of the frame up here on the back side of the battery. They slide through the frame and you put a nylon nut on them, basically, or a bump stop for the swing arm. You can visualize a triangle of the swing arm as it's flexing up and down on the motorcycle. As it flexes down, the top of the swing arm is going to hit this. It does a couple of things. One, it doesn't allow the shocks to overextend and put pressure on them, and it doesn't allow the frame or the swing arm to slam into the frame. Metal on metal, not good, not too good. But by being rubber, they lessen that when you bottom out. You're not getting the full effect of the road riding you as opposed to you riding the road. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on these things. I'll snap a couple of pics of them real quick, and then we'll get this top half buttoned up, and then we'll be ready for that little trick I mentioned and to get the swing arm put in. So stick around, YouTube. Got our two new bump stops in, and I want to show you what these look like and give you a tip on putting them in. It's a rubber bump stop. It gives, and it's made sort of like a grommet, with the metal piece already in it and the threaded rod coming out of it to hold it. This is your standard nut. It's flat on both sides, six-sided. There you go. This is a nylon nut. It's basically the same thing on one side, but on the other side it has a crimped area, and I'm going to try to zoom in on it, and you can see what's left right there of the nylon. When that nylon is new and your bolt passes through it, it cuts new grooves into it. You can call this a tech tip if you want, but the nylon also helps to lock the nut onto the bolt. So if you've got something that you don't really want to put any Loctite on, but you don't want to risk it backing off, like on a Harley Davidson that shakes a lot, hello, you may want to try a nylon nut. A tech tip about putting these things in: when it passes through the back side, you're going to be holding it like this with your hand while you're trying to tighten the nut up on the inside of the frame. Here's a suggestion, especially if they're brand new and they're still got some flexibility to them. If they're the old ones and the original ones, I would just tell you to replace them. But you can always put a pair of channel locks around this thing to hold it and then tighten it. Now we've got our tag mounting bracket on, and that simply just goes in here with 3 bolts, and you can see the new 3 ones on this side. Put a lock washer on the back side of them and gave them a good little tightening. Let's talk about this thing for a minute. You see what that tag mount is attaching itself to, right? The fender. And the fender's got what on it? Paint. Tech tip: do not over tighten this, because if you do, you're going to mess your paint up. it'll crack. Just don't do it. Don't give this thing a full grunt. This thing is probably a quarter grunt. I mean, you just want it snug and just a little bit more with a lock washer on the back of it. You'll hear it. It'll let you know when you're messing up and you're getting too tight. All right, let's move on. Another Ziploc. Bye-bye. So now we have 6 bolts, 2 here, 2 here, and 2 here that we need to get tightened up on all sides. Everything back here is good, but the thing that we got to be careful about, on the inside of the fender here, where this bolt comes in, once it's tight, we only want just a little bit of thread sticking out of the bolt. See this one here? That's way too long. That could hit your wheel on the way down. So we're going to see if we can match up some bolts to the right length, being long enough without being too long, and get this thing tightened in. Now we're getting into the specifics of what's going on here. The tire's ready to go in. The caliper and the caliper mounting bracket are ready to go in. Chrome swing arm, our original swing arm. And I want to offer you a tech tip here. If you can see how pretty and shiny this thing is, I want you to look right down here for a minute. You see that right there that looks like copper? All right. Well, chroming something, when it's done correctly, tech tip, is a 3-step process. Actually 4. It's stripping it down to the bare metal. Then you come back and you start dipping it, and you do a copper, nickel, chrome finish. Copper, nickel, chrome. Bearings, like these spherical bearings here, and I'm sorry, I can't say that correctly, but where a normal bearing spins straight in a circular motion, because this swing arm flexes in these pivot bolts here, letting the bike go down. The wheel stays the same height over here, and the front wheel stays the same height over there, but the middle of the bike gives. And we'll talk about that in another video. These bearings right here not only must spin straight or have the flexibility to go straight, but they need to go sideways and front ways and back ways and all kinds of ways. They are really tight in here. And that brings me back to the copper. When we got this thing back, these bearings would not fit back in these holes. You can see the other one over here. This spacer sits right there, slides up to this big hole here, along with the access pivot bar that we have to mount right here. But back to the copper. I know I'm chatty today. When we got these back, a bearing should fit tight. This is a tech tip. Let me say that again. A bearing should fit tight. It should not just fall in the hole. But what happens is when you, and this bearing was designed from the factory with a tolerance to, and this swing arm was designed with a tolerance to allow that bearing to fit in there snug. Well, the copper, nickel, chrome plating process made this hole tighter, too tight, and I can't explain that to you. You've got to have tried to put a bearing in before to understand when it's too tight, and it risks damaging the chrome or breaking the swing arm or breaking the bearing. So what we did, we had to go in here with a little Dremel and a little brush and clean this up, and it's a time-consuming process. You take a little bit off and you try it, you take a little bit off and you try it, and you're beating on it with a hammer or a shop hammer and a socket or a press if you have somebody that does that, and those guys will know when to stop before they break something. But it's just a little process, and as you can see, we had to take it down to the copper level before it would actually go in there without damaging the bearing, without damaging the chrome, and without damaging the swing arm. Like I said before, these things are puzzles, and you'll see it more better here once we get it in the bike. But this pivot arm, or this pivot axis, has to slide in here, and then all this has to slide up to here. But I want you to notice something. I'm gonna give you a minute to look for yourself and see if you get it. I'm gonna hold the camera right here. This is the drive sprocket on the transmission that comes back to the drive sprocket on the wheel. This has to go into the swing arm right here, and then all of this goes up into right there. Do you see what we have to do first? I'm gonna give you about 10 seconds to think about it. Did you figure it out? The belt has to go around that, around this, then this goes in to the swing arm with the belt coming above it and below it to go in there. Since the swing arm is so much lower than the bike, I'm gonna get the John jack over here. I'm gonna get it jacked up level, or either block it up with some other 2x4s, get it about level where it needs to be at. I'm gonna get the belt around the gear on the pulley. I'm gonna get it laid through the swing arm, and then I'm gonna get this pivoting axle into here. This is a little tech tip. I've been handling this thing a lot since I got it back from the chromer, and just playing with it and touching it up and moving it here and moving it there. And one thing that I have learned, it's easier to clean something really good and then get a few smudges on it while you're installing it than to get it in where it's going and then try to clean it. So little tech tip here, if you're working on a big piece, a big heavy piece, it's got a lot of different moving places on it, give it a good cleaning before you put it in. That's less things that you have to wipe down once you get it in there. Okay, so we got our work area prepping over here. We got everything in the back for our axle. We got our caliper and our caliper mounting bracket here. We got our pivot axis over here, and we've got our 2 spacers. But I want to talk to you about these bolts here. These are probably the biggest bolts that are on this FLST, and they're really important. They're the pieces that are going to slide in through these holes, and on this side over here, they are going to meet this piece here after we put it in the swing arm. And these 2 bolts are what hold your rear wheel on. So you want to pay attention to them. So I'm gonna offer you a little tech tip here. You can see the white stuff in the thread of these bolts. This is old Loctite. So you can see how there's none in there on that side, but you can see it all garbly gooped up over there. That's because I've taken a steel brush to this. You don't want these things fighting threads going into where they're going. And I'm trying to turn this thing up so you can see the thread on. Yeah, the threads in there look pretty clean. If they did not look clean, you might want to go in there with a tap and clean those threads up. And if these threads were all messed up, you might want to go in there with a die and clean those up. But I think a wire brush will work fine on that. This will be another little tech tip here. We're going to use red Loctite on this. Red Loctite's pretty tough stuff. It has to be taken out with power tools. What we're going to do now is I'm either going to get the John jack over here and get the swing arm staged on it, or I'm going to use some 2x4s to bring the swing arm up more level with where we're going in to work. This drive belt is going to have to go in here and around that sprocket, because this piece has to go in between it. This is going to be another one of those monkeys playing with a football here, trying to get all this lined up together, but we're going to get at it. Making sure that the belt is up here on the transmission sprocket, running through where this piece is going to go here, and on the inside of the swing arm itself. Is we're going to try to take a rubber mallet, squeeze this thing in the right direction, and then we're going to get her put in there. So what we're going to try to do, YouTube, is turn this thing in such a way that I can get in here and tap on it without it falling. This thing is going to have to go in, and you're going to have to give it a little something something. One side's going to line up while the other side's not going to line up. So while trying to keep it level, we just want to bring it in where it needs to be at. Little taps. You can put your finger in the hole over here, kind of feel when it's lining up. Feels pretty good. Don't want no comments about my finger being in the hole. The next step in this process is to get this shim up in here and to stay there, and it's not going to want to stay there. So what I'm going to try to do is to manipulate it in here with those two pieces in. In a way that it will stay in there. Now what I got to do, oh, don't get my finger out of there. Alright, so that went in pretty good. What I'm going to try to do is to hold this thing now while I get rid of some of these boards. Alright, I think our shim is still in. Our shim's still in on this side. We're about level with the hole, so we're doing good. Now, I'm going to take this moment to put this red Loctite on these bolts. And just put it on there. 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Get our washer on, get it prepped. We're going to slide this forward in the hopes that it will pick it up in the front and get it where it needs to be at. Get this one started over here. I can tell that it's going into the spacer. Looks like it's starting to make contact with the pivot axle. Pulling up and down on it, it feels good. Go to the other side. If not, that side started. Went in a lot easier than I thought it would. We're going to come over here now. Pick up on this one. Start turning it in. Looks like it's going in good. Time to get a socket. I'll get a better way to do that. Alright, so we're not going to run it down too hard with this thing because we don't want to mess up the powder coating. So we're going to stop right off of it. Now one thing you want to be careful about is making sure that this piece stays where it needs to stay at. I just noticed that it rotated. So we'll back the other side off a little bit and get it situated. Alright. Alright. Good job. Looks good, YouTube. Looks real good. There she is. And you can hear it thunking on the bottom. Hear that? That's because we don't have the shocks in there to stop it from going all the way down. But listen up here. Hear that? It's hitting those bump stops. YouTube, we're going to break the video right here. As I've said before, I'm trying to keep the videos a little bit shorter. I know I get chatty, but you know, as I have always said, my goal when I started these videos was to give you the information you needed so you could work on your own motorcycle in your own garage without taking it out here and giving your money to somebody else. And I can't do everything I need you to know in a 3-minute video. Sometimes they got to run a little long. But moving forward, here's where we're at. We need the caliper that's already been mounted onto the caliper mounting bracket into the bike. We need to get the rock guard on, and then we need to get the rear wheel in. So we're going to do that in the next video. The link should be popping up here pretty soon for that video. Also, I wanted to mention the little shop where you saw me tossing the Ziploc bag away. If you've been following along with us, you know that I stress organizing parts as you take them off of a vehicle, a motorcycle, a car, whatever. Doing a major teardown like we're doing here with Donna, taking it down to the frame, we're going to have nuts and bolts laying everywhere, and some of them will be the same size. Some of them will be different threads. But here's your little tech tip if this is the first video that you've seen. I take bolts off from where they're coming off, stick them in a Ziploc bag, and then I write the name of where that goes at. Like rear tag mount, rear axle bolts, tank bolts, right side lower control bolts, left side lower control bolts. And it's just a little game that I play, that when I put something back on the bike, bam, I throw that Ziploc bag away. So we got rid of another Ziploc bag here, and I think we're probably going to get rid of some more before this video is over with. So use that as a little tech tip. Check out the Facebook page. That's all I've got to say about that. So we're wrapping it up. As always, YouTube, thanks for coming by the garage. Ride safe, handle your business, save some money, and